a good franchisor should talk about the mistakes that they've made and what they learned from it and how they've changed moving forward. Good franchisors should want the good franchisees to get together and talk, and they should help facilitate some of that. They should have franchisees that are amazing franchisees get on calls and coach other franchisees that are not doing as well. So the franchisors that just want to be the ones that are always talking and telling franchisees, what to do, that's not always the best thing. We all learn from peers and from each other. And so I'd like it when franchisors bring on top performing franchisees to share what they're learning about how to run a successful business.
Yo, this is the Streetwise Podcast. We're here to help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant, which means I help people find, launch, and build their ideal franchise business. Our main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready. Let's go. Streetwise Nation, we got Erik Van Horn with us today. Yes, I said it. Erik Van Horn in the flesh on the Streetwise stage. Welcome, Mr. Van Horn. Appreciate you.
I didn't know this was Streetwise Nation, man. I would have gotten dressed up and ironed my shirt or done something a little bit different, man. I'm ready.
Yeah, we're talking to Streetwise Nation, man, and Streetwise Nation would not exist if it wasn't for Franchise Secrets and the platform that you've built and are continuing to build every single day, every week, every month, every year. And so we appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for all that you do.
I love to hear that. It's fun just to see impact of just consistency and getting in the reps and how that's impacted people. And now you get to do the same thing. So it's really cool to see impact from podcasts and having amazing guests on that have impact. And then, so it's fun to see you, taking the initiative and doing it. And in a handful of years, your podcast will probably be bigger than mine, which would be awesome.
That would be awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate you for coming on. It's big for me to give the roses whenever I have the opportunity to. So thank you so much. We'll get into the story a little bit, but you talk about impact and influence. I'm going to hit you with the heavy hitter. Just first question, man. Did you have anybody that you looked up to when you came into this space? Was there anybody that was doing it big that you were like, oh, I'm going to be like that guy?
Not when I first came in. I picked a brand that I was going to learn. The founder, the CEO, was very active in the business, and I wanted to learn from him. And that's when I started to do franchise sales. And in addition to being a franchisee, because I knew that he was mentoring and coaching and very active in the franchise development team. So I loved that. And so I took that job, selling franchises, to be able to learn a skill, to be able to learn from him, to have that kind of mentor in my life on franchise development as I was getting paid for it as well. And it turned out that's when I started to make my first six figures as an employee working, 7 months out of the year doing that. And then I got to see certain franchisees in that system that were started when I did, and they were better than me. They were really, really good. And I just became friends with them and eventually became business partners with them. And to this day, we're really, really good friends with a handful of people that were, I never called them mentors. They were peers of mine, but they were better than me. So in a lot of ways, they were my mentors, but they were also peers. And so in the franchising space, I would say that's, those are the people that I looked up to. And then I looked up to other people who were just good people doing the right thing. They weren't in franchising, but early on in my journey of being a business owner, they cared about employees. They taught me how to manage employees, how to fire employees and why to fire the bad ones. And because you're really devaluing the good ones if you keep the bad ones on. And so I had mentors in my life that impacted me 20 something years ago. And last week I was skiing all week in Breckenridge and Vail. all week. And it was at that original mentor in my life that told me how to hire and fire and taught me some of those values. He has a beautiful place in Breckenridge. And I was skiing with him all week. And so it's just amazing to see
Oh, that's awesome.
relationships in my early 20s are still relationships that I have today in my late 40s.
Man, that's awesome. Maybe I'll edit out the late 40s part. I thought we were about the same. I didn't think you were that much. Just kidding.
No, we can't. We
No,
have to
that's
keep
really
it in
cool.
now. We have to keep it in now.
We,
If I was if I was like in my 50s, then we'd have to edit that out for sure. But
okay.
I'm still in I'm in late 40s, so we're good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's a great place in life. And that gives me to my next question too, because I wanted to talk about how your circle and how like your circle of influence has changed over the years. Because man, when I listen to you, I mean, you are a big player in the space now. And you talk about Justin Donald, and I know about him because of you and the investor group. But you've got the masterminds, and I know you're leading these things, but I also know that being the facilitator is how you get a ton of value out of these rooms as well. So maybe walk me through how you facilitated your circle of influence over the last 20 years as you've grown in the space.
Well, it's like a podcast. So, the reason I started a podcast was reason I first started it with my buddy Brian Holmes. We had one called The Franchise Story, and we're like, let's just hit record and let's start doing it. And then I started to realize how we could get guests on our podcast that I had no business in just talk that, I couldn't call them up and just have a conversation with them. And that's how I got to know Cameron Harold. I'm like, hey, Cameron, would you come on our podcast? And Cameron was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK and has written some amazing books out there and is just an operational genius. So we had Cameron on, and then I became friends with Cameron. And then I realized, wow, this is great. So it's a stage. A podcast is a stage, and you can be on other people's stages, or you can have your own stage and bring people on your stage. And so I started to realize that. And so then, I started my own podcast called Franchise Secrets. And then I got people like Robert Kiyosaki on it. And we never became friends, but I had big names that would come on the podcast. Alex Hormozy was on my podcast. And so I realized that, some of these people I'd eventually connect with and get to be friends with, and they were doing bigger things in business and in life than I was doing. And so I start to become friends with these people. And then I started these masterminds because I saw other people, I would join other masterminds to be a part of it, to be a part of people that were doing, that were ahead of me in the journey, that were doing bigger things than me. And then I started to realize that the founders of these masterminds were just curating rooms, so they could get value out of these rooms. Instead of just being a member, they were the leader. And so I started the Facebook group. So people from the podcast would come into the Facebook group, and then and that grew from like 0 when COVID first happened to there's over 6,000 people in this Facebook group now. And then, and so out of that Facebook group, I started a mastermind for franchisees. And then I started a mastermind for franchisors. And so I get a really cool guest on my podcast. I'm like, well, why don't you come into the franchise mastermind and talk to my franchisors or talk to my franchisees? And then I would become friends with some of these speakers. And that's what happened with Alex Hormozy during COVID. And then eventually had some different calls with him, getting him connected with some different people in my world. And so I realized that curating these rooms, I could bring on amazing guests, give them the platform, give them the stage, and they would deliver really good value, really good content, but also people in the mastermind would ask really good questions. They would talk about things that I didn't know about, or they would ask a question that I didn't think about, or they would start a conversation that I wasn't the expert in. And then there was experts in the room that were smarter about all of this stuff than more have better conversations. They had more experience than I had, and I got to learn from it. But I was a guy curating all this stuff, so I get to be in the middle of all of it. So it's just curating these rooms. And then kind of come full circle, I was friends with Justin Donald, and I said, hey, you've got this amazing lifestyle investor mastermind. People are paying $55,000 a year to be a part of it. Why don't we start something less expensive than that and do it together? And 6 months later, we started the Tribe of Investors. And that one especially, I get to learn from my investing mentor, Justin Donald. He's a friend, he's a mentor, and he's a business partner. And then we get to bring on amazing guests in there and get to learn from them. And the members are some of the smartest people in investing in certain areas, and we get to learn from them. So anyway, kind of a long answer, but that's been my journey with that.
Oh, that's perfect. Has there been anything that has been like an unknown, something that was an obstacle as you start building out these rooms that maybe was an obstacle that you had to overcome, or like your world was opened in a way that you didn't even know was possible beforehand? I mean, I get the curating and having access to the people, but somebody like myself who's just getting started in building out the platform and is thinking about, okay, what kind of rooms could I create as I look to get into higher level rooms? And I got to meet you at the Franchise Conference, which blew my mind. Got to play pickleball with you, which was like, man, embarrassed myself. But you know what? That's the only way you get better, is when you play with people that are way better than you. So yeah, man, I want to learn from you, like how, like what were some things that you didn't expect that you had to kind of grow through when you started down that path?
When I first started the franchise tribe, the mastermind for franchisees, I was nervous that nobody would want to join. Nobody would pay for it. And, you call it imposter syndrome. You just call it lack of confidence. Whatever it is, I'm like, people aren't going to want to do this. And I'm like, I just need to do it. I just need to start. And so I put out, I had friends that had, told me what to do and how to do it. And a friend of mine, Aaron Stokes, who has an amazing mastermind for auto mechanic shop owners, he's the one that told me to start the Facebook group. And if I hadn't started that Facebook group, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened. But he encouraged me 2 years before I started it to start it. And I wish I would have just started when he told me. So one is you just start something, and I delayed too many things. I delayed the Facebook group. I delayed the podcast. I delayed all this stuff, and I just get started. Like in investing, you just got to get in the game of investing. Start with $5,000 or $20,000 or $50,000, but you just got to get in the game. I didn't get in the game of podcasting. I didn't get in on social like I should have soon enough. Dude, I was supposed to start podcasting about 4 years before I started. Like I had bought the equipment, I was ready to do it, and I'm like, no one's going to listen to it. And I'm like, that's the, so I didn't start. I'm like, I need to do all these other things to start, and I just didn't start. So one, just get started. And for me, it was imposter syndrome. No one's going to listen. No one's going to pay me. No one's going, so that was just a lie that I kind of told myself. And who cares if it was true or not? I should have just started and then pivoted or just continued at something. So the other thing is, you just get in the reps and you just start, you do the podcast, and it doesn't matter what the numbers are, because you can look at the numbers and just get so discouraged. And I always used to think, man, my podcast sucks because nobody listens to it. I'm talking to these, you compare it to Joe Rogan and like, yes, it does suck. But then when I started comparing it to other people's podcasts in the industry and in franchising and just in general, I know what my listeners are. And I was like, wow, I have way more listeners than most people that I know that have podcasts. And it started to give me more confidence in that. But it's just because of consistency and getting in the reps and just doing it. And so those things matter. Consistency matters. I don't know. Those are three things. Just get started. Consistency matters. And then just overcoming my own lack of confidence or imposter syndrome to just execute on what I want to do.
What's going on, everybody? I hope you're liking the conversation this far. Please take a moment, give it a 5-star review. It really helps spread this out to as many people as possible. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Oh man, that's super encouraging to hear you say that, because for me, and I've said this multiple times on this show, it took me 5 years to make the very first episode. I was worried about the jingle that I was going to use. I was worried about just minuscule things that actually didn't matter. The mic that I was going to, it's like, well, I don't have any money to buy a good mic and I don't want it to sound bad, but you go back to my first episode, we're on Riverside right now. That's the platform. And I love Riverside. It's got some quirks to it, but I forgot to press echo cancellation. And so every time I speak, there's just a bad echo in the background, but I did it. And by the time this episode posts, I mean, this will be like episode 56, and it's been less than a year. And I got you on here, and it's just, that is so true. Just start it, just do it. And that actually leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about. You had said something on one of your shows, and I think I've heard you say it more than once, but the idea of earn the call. And do you remember saying that, referencing that? And it stuck to me, because here I was, a franchisee. Now I'm going on my 9th season, but this would have been when I was introduced to you, season 7, about halfway through the summer. Just had my daughter, so I was taking some time off, and I binged every piece of content you had put out. And it was the idea of earn the call. Speak into me a little bit about what you mean when you tell people you got to earn the call.
So a friend of mine, he's a local guy, way more successful financially than I am, and just further along in business and investing than I am. Became a good friend, and his name's Darcy Harbot. He's been on the podcast, and he, whenever I hear something like just a couple, like something that somebody says, you're like, wow, that's interesting, just a little nugget. And he gave me this little nugget and told me this story about how he was, basically just, doing the right thing over and over and over. And then at one point, somebody called him and said, "Hey, I got a business deal for you. You might want to look at this thing." Kind of out of the blue, we got this call, and because he's just done the right thing for years and years and years with this particular person. So he got introduced to somebody, and it eventually became the baddest business that he's ever owned. He bought it because someone called him up and said, "Hey, Darcy, you should look at buying this business that so-and-so is selling." And so he's like, "Erik, I earned that call because I did the right thing. I was consistent. Wow. I was a man of my word. I wasn't looking at this just from what I could gain from this relationship." He's like, I earned this call. And so I thought about that, and it was impacting for me, like it was impacting for you when you heard that and heard me talk about that. It was impacting when he said that. And I've told him since then, like, "Darcy, you got to talk about that on the podcast because it impacted me." And so at different times since then, that was probably 5 years ago, he told me that, I'd be like, "Darcy, I just earned the call." Because all of a sudden I'd get a call out of the blue like, "Hey, I need to introduce you to so-and-so." And so I want to be the guy that somebody thinks about when there's a good deal or a good opportunity or, an introduction that should be made. I want to be the guy that gets that call because I've earned it, because I've been a good friend. I've been a good mentor. I've been a good mentee. I've done the right thing. And so I want to be the guy that earns that call. And just like he was, and I've had that happen to me, and it's amazing.
Man, well, you've transitioned now, and now you're one of the ones that probably makes the call. I mean, what is that like? What do you look for when, you've been on the side of, "I got to earn this call. I got to grind. I got to build. Maybe I got a chip on my shoulder, but I want to build this thing." And now you're on the other side of it. What is it that somebody like you is looking for in the person that's grinding? What are some key traits that you want to see out of somebody that's just building, not knowing that your call is on the other side?
Well, I think a lot of it's with our founders at Front Street. So we look, it's going to be what we look for in founders. And I just interviewed a guy named Andy Ayers on my podcast, who is a top restore hyper wellness franchisee, and then he just bought GoGlow. Nice. And he I said, "What did you find attractive about the founder in GoGlow?" And what I realized, a lot of what he liked about that founder, the things that we like about the founders that we work with at Front Street. And so so you could translate that to not just a founder of a brand, but anybody, but they've got the tenacity. He's like, "Erik, Mel's going to do what it takes, whatever it takes. She's going to face challenges and she's going to do whatever it takes. She's an overcomer. She's faced challenges in the past, building it to where she got to where she is today. There's going to be challenges in the future because there's always challenges as you're building franchise brands from 0 to 50 to 100 locations or 100 franchisees that are open. There's always challenges. And you want to be with that founder that has the tenacity to be like, there's a challenge and I'm not going to back down. I'm going to find a way to overcome that challenge. I'm going to find the person that can help me overcome that challenge. You want to be teachable. You want to be coachable. We look for founders that are coachable, that are teachable, that are humble, that don't have to have it all figured out and don't put on a front like they've got it all figured out. So, so those are some of the things, just like, as as franchisees out there looking for employees, like who would you want as an employee? It's the same characteristic as you want as a founder of the brand that you own. And so I just look for people like, people that have worked for me in the past. I had a guy, Michael, who worked for me. He came from, he was kind of at a point where he was lost in the sense that he did not have a good job opportunity in front of him, and he didn't have the skill set to go get a really good job. But the guy was loyal. The guy was going to do whatever it took to prove that he was worthy to be able to work for me and to get mentored by me, and he did. And then there came a time when he was ready to move on. And he moved on and he started selling solar for a company. And then, we're still friends today. And he just called me up the other day. He's like, Erik, that time that I worked for you, you taught me stuff that I didn't even realize how valuable it was that you were teaching me. But he was a guy that he worked for me, but I didn't want him working for me just for a paycheck. I was like mentoring him, and he didn't even know it half the time. And so somebody like a Michael that is just a sponge that was going to soak things up, that was going to take whatever I was giving him and put that into his mind, into his heart, and into something that he was going to be able to do something with at some point. Now he's, getting ready to get married. He's making a ton of money. And I told him, I said, Michael, you've made yourself so valuable. Like, you didn't just get a job for me for a paycheck. You just didn't go into this other business just to get a paycheck. Like, you've made yourself valuable. So if you were to get fired from that company today, like, you could go out and start a business. You could go out and work for another company because you've made yourself valuable. So I look for people like him that have that type of mindset.
Yo, thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about Streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building, Streetwise franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode. That's huge, man. I love that. And that's, I've tried to implement that into my culture with my team and the different brands that we have. And we have the identity of a development culture. And I say in every interview, when you leave, not if, but when we go different paths, because life happens, I want you to be in a better place than you were when we found each other. And if I can facilitate that, I've done my job. And I've had a handful of individuals over the last 8.5 years that started minimum wage with me, as much as I could pay them, but very low level work, that they've now got $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 jobs, full salary, full benefits. And it's beautiful. Like, I love it. And so I resonate with that. Okay. I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to run through my knowledge of your experience in franchising, how you got started to where you are now. And I want you to fill in the gaps. All right.
Let's do it.
That's fair. All right. So you got started, you had a small landscaping business, and you got a relationship with one of your clients, and you now own this house. And then you use the house to spin it into owning your first franchise business, which then you build up, you become area development partnership, you exit. Then you do something with Sola Salon, and that was Liberty Tax. Then you come in with Sola Salons.
In Austin, Texas.
In Austin, Texas. Okay. And then you come in with the group of individuals. You go in on Sola Salons. You do it big. You exit again. Then this is where it gets fuzzy for me. You become a franchisor at some point, and you're also a consultant, and you've spun all those things, and now you have Front Street Equity Partners. There's a lot of gaps in there. Can you fill some of those in? Like, what am I missing? And what were some of those transition periods like?
So, 10 years with Liberty Tax, roughly almost 10 years. And then, so exited that, moved from Austin to Spearfish, South Dakota, town of 10,000 people.
Whoa.
Beautiful little spot. We got like a, 80-acre little ranch out here. And then, so moved here. This is where I grew up. So the kids could be around. We're starting to have a family, so the kids could be around grandparents, and just a good quality of life here. So we did that, and then so the next 10 years are kind of fast forward to I did, I think, 6 or 7 different brands, 3 of them as area developers or regional developers or master franchise, and the others as a franchisee. And so one of those was Sola Salons. And so, so 10 years, 1 brand, 1 exit. The next 10 years are like, multiple brands, multiple partnerships, in multiple states. And so, but the one thing that I think I left out there is when I moved, how I got into those next brands was I became a consultant. I was, that's when I called up old Jeff Elgin and said, "Hey, I want to be a consultant." He's like, "We're doing things different, Eric. You can't just be a consultant right now." Like they put a hard stop on bringing on consultants, and I was getting ready to fly out and go meet with them. I live in Austin, and I was getting ready to go fly out. I bought my ticket, and he's like, "Eric, I'm sorry to do this, but things are changing in the industry. Leads aren't flowing like they used to. We're thinking about putting together this new program where we bring on people that like you that have franchising experience, and then might be able to drum up your own business versus just rely on leads that you get from franchise." So I'm like, well, that sucks. But 6 months later, I got a call. "Hey, we got this new thing. We're ready to roll out. Are you in?" I said, "I'm in." And so that's when I went to Minneapolis and started training to become a franchise consultant. The reason I did that is because I wanted like that inside scoop for the next brands that I was buying. And then I was the laziest consultant because I would just get calls from my friends in franchising that wanted to buy their next franchise. I'm like, "Okay, here's some good ones that I'm looking at, have looked at. You should look at them too." And then they would end up buying. And so I probably had the best close rate, not making a ton of money, but making easy money. And then at some point I started to take it real serious and started to do real well at that. All at the same time, I was either doing the consulting business, but I was also growing, these different brands at the same time. And Sola, I found that at Franchise conference. I think they were only with Franchise. The founders, Matt and Stratton, came out to, it was Arizona and Scottsdale. And I knew that they were going to be there. And I cornered them at the bar that first night before things even started. And I was pounding them with questions and texting my future business partners at the same time. And that's when we ended up getting into that brand and built 12 of them in a 5-year period and sold that to private equity. So that was all because I made the decision to become a consultant, and that's how I found that brand. So then at some point I decided to not be a franchisee anymore, only be a passive investor in franchise brands, which I am today. As a franchisee, just a passive investor in killer operators that are part of killer brands, and on the franchisor side. So now passive investor in a bunch of passive investments in franchises, and then really active on the franchisor side of things.
So what is Front Street Equity Partners? Maybe explain to the listener and to me so I have a full concept of what you guys are building on that front.
So there, about a couple of years ago, me and 2 other guys Jim and Jeff were like, we've all had some nice exits. We've all done a ton in the franchising world. We're not ready to just retire and do nothing. What do we want to do? And how much work do we want to do? And so let's do something that suits us. Doesn't matter what's been done before. Let's do something that suits us. And so we're like, we love advising brands. We love to help brands scale. We love to see brands, sell franchises and help them do that. And we saw some things that we could do differently, better in our opinion, but differently than what other people are doing, how they're doing them. And so we're like, we need to have an arm of Front Street that is selling franchises, an outsourced FSO. And we don't want to do that just for anybody. We'll only do it for brands that we are going to have significant impact on. And Jeff and I looked at each other. We were on a Zoom and we're like, we could do this. He said, could you go back into selling franchises? He said, I could do it for a year. I'm like, I could do it for a year, but I don't want to. Like, I don't want to go back to selling franchises. And so we're like, well, shoot, we all can do it, but we don't enjoy it anymore. It's not something that energizes us. It does not bring us joy.
Doesn't fill the cup.
It just kill us. So we're like, we need to bring on a rock star. And so then we eventually brought on Bobby Brennan, who is a rock star. He's a freaking rock star.
Love Bobby.
And what we did is we could have brought him on as a hired gun. Somebody pay him a lot of money to do it. But we wanted someone as an equal partner. So we'd already been in this business, working it for like 6 or 9 months before Bobby came in. We gave him equal shares of the business because we're like, wow, that's what we want. We want someone that's all in. And that's how we are as partners. We're like, at different times, there's going to be different workloads for all of us. And so we don't want a partnership that is like, oh, we've already done 9 months of work and now you're coming in, you get to take advantage of all that. Well, we're only going to give you 20% or 19% or something. We're like, no, we're a partnership and we're all in and we're doing this together. So I was good with that. And I love it that my business partners were good with that. And that's the sign of a great partnership. You're looking at the partnership and wanting what's best for the business of Front Street versus like what's best for your own individual pocketbook. So Front Street today is we have an outsourced FSO, franchise sales organization arm that we only do for our own franchise brands. Like we will sell just like all the other FSOs do for our brands. We're strategic.
You've got equity in these. You've got equity in these that you're selling.
And a lot of that comes from the strategic advisory. So like we will participate in an exit with these brands. So if they sell to private equity at some point, that's our big payday. Like we don't charge a retainer. A lot of these places are charging $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month to do some of the things that we do. We don't charge like that because we believe we want to earn our keep. We want to participate on the upside with them. We'll make money as an FSO along the way, but we just want to be fully aligned with the brands that we're part of. So full alignment to us looks like, let's have hurdles. Let's make significant impact on the business. Let's get in the trenches and help you with training, help you with franchisee relationships, help you hire great vendors, help you hire great people. So one of the other things we do, we have an arm that is just helping find good talents, like talent acquisition for our brands. With my audience, I never knew that having these 6,000 people in a Facebook group, having the reach that I have on the podcast and these other ways just gives me the ability to send out an email, put out a post and say, I'm looking for a COO. I'm looking for a franchise development person. I'm looking for a CMO or a fractional this or a fractional that. I can do that now. Now I've built up this database of amazing people that are not actively looking for work, but they are interested when I have something that comes open for one of our brands. And so there's a talent acquisition piece. And, for all of our brands, we've been able to place some really good people, but it's come from my network. And so that's where I've made myself valuable without even realizing that I was doing it. And it all started with that podcast back then. So Front Street, does that strategic advisory where we are doing conference calls or Zooms with our brand founders. We are vetting out resources for them. We are actively helping them with the FDD. We're helping them with everything, man. Like we are that group that helps them with everything because we are building that brand side by side with them. And so that's really what Front Street's about.
Man, and I might be guilty of the individual that might not be looking for work, but whenever I see one of you guys post something, it's like, it looks good. I'm interested, but I'm not. I don't know. No, that's cool. What have been some of the learning curves that, you've had to pick up? Obviously this is something that you've been able to do because of all of your experience throughout the years. You said earlier, the reps, and the consistency, and you've been able to sit in all these different seats, but still you're doing this thing and you're building this for yourself this time. What were some learning curves in the transition that unknown unknowns, again, like you didn't know you were going to have to run into?
In the franchising world, there are people that will promise you so many things and they don't deliver. Vendors are one of them. People are one of them. The wrong hires. The wrong hires at a higher level are the same issues that you have at a lower level. So, not lower level is probably not the right way to frame it, but a lower paid employee.
Sure.
They're not COO type people. They are store manager, but you need to go through a full hiring process to make sure you are vetting them out fully, and then having an amazing onboarding process for them to succeed and set them up for success in their job. So I've seen some, if the founders don't have the ability to bring on these higher level positions and they don't have experience in hiring them, we want to be able to help them manage that person or help them understand how to manage a higher level person, because they're probably higher level than the founder. I mean, they should be. A founder should be at the point where they want to hire people that are better than them, smarter than them, at marketing and operations and all these other things. And so founders kind of go through this phase where, like, hey, I'm a great founder, but I'm not the person that is going to go from 50 to 100 locations. And I don't want to lead that from an operational standpoint or from a marketing standpoint or from a financial standpoint. Maybe they need to bring in a CFO, a fractional CFO, and to help them get to that next level. So I think it's helping, helping founders understand their role in the business and to be able to take a step back and hire people that are better than them. And then with vendors, you will have vendors all day long that will say, hey, this is the way to do it. This is the best way. This is what great SEO looks like. And this is what we'll do for you. And then, founders realize later on, like, I just got a bunch of bad advice here. Mm-hmm. This is not great SEO. This is not the right way to have ads structured. This is not the best way to have your location pages off of your main landing page, be structured. Or this is how a vendor can trap you into a long-term contract that is not valuable to the franchisee or the franchisor. So there's so many different traps out there and vendors that are not really helpful to franchisors. And some of them are the biggest vendors, the most well-known vendors out there, but they are not the best. And so it's the Wild West out there when it comes to that. The other thing is, really helping franchisors understand you don't want to just sell franchise locations or bring on franchisees, because so many early brands make the wrong choices on bringing on franchisees because they can write a check. They don't think that's why they're doing it, but looking back to like, oh, they weren't the right franchisee because of this reason or that reason. Well, we help them put into place a really good selection process. So they're bringing on much better franchisees. And even with our brands that we've been a part of in the past, currently, they're like, oh, wow, I realized why I was making a mistake and bringing on some of these wrong franchisees. And this is what great looks like. I didn't realize what great looks like until they realize what great franchisees look like, or great vendors or great advisors. They are settling and they don't really realize it. But the same is true for all of us in all kinds of areas of our lives. So I like to help them understand what great looks like: great SEO, great marketing, great branding, great operations, great training. And so they can understand that and set that bar higher. I think it's better for everybody.
Man, you're hitting right where I wanted to go with my next line. There's a lot of value in that. So I appreciate you kind of touching on it. There's two different pathways, and so maybe you can help me kind of clean it up and put it, succinct. But I want to talk about, what you're saying now, assessing the average franchisee versus the great franchisee from the founder, the franchisor side. But then there's the alternative where you got potential franchisees trying to evaluate, you said the words earlier, killer brands. Like as an investor and as a franchisee, I want to make sure that I know what that looks like. And you've had such an experience going around on both sides of it. Let's start with the franchisee first. What makes a good franchisee or an average franchisee or versus a great franchisee? What do you mean when you say that?
So let's say they're part of a good system where most of the franchisees are making money. So if that's true, an average a poor franchisee is always going to be looking at the fees. Why am I getting charged this? Why are you charging that? Or they're going to look for, why are you making me do this? Why can't I change this? They're always questioning everything about the brand. They're always wanting to try to innovate without executing first. They think there's a better way to do it versus just executing on what works for the majority of franchisees. So I'm not even talking about just what the franchisor is telling you, like what's working for the majority of franchisees out there. So they're not executing on what's working for the majority of franchisees. They are hanging around with other franchisees that are not making money. Like their friends, their group that if they go to convention, they're hanging out with people that are not making money or complaining. Maybe they are making money, but they're just complainers. So they hang out with the wrong people versus hang out with the right people. I think the other thing, like let's say a poor performing franchisee would go to a top performing franchisee location and be like, oh, I'm going to go look and learn. But their mentality as they go in, they are finding everything that they are doing that right, that the top performing franchisee is doing right. Oh, I have the same color of paint. I have the same, the same open sign. I have the same, the same uniforms. I have the same this, the same that, but they are not looking for what they are doing differently than what you are doing. So they just go into it with a mindset of, I've already got this figured out. I'm going to validate everything that I'm already doing, so I don't have to look at the things that I'm doing wrong. Average franchisee, those are probably the toughest because average franchisees probably, it's really hard to get them to move up or to move down. They might just have a really good location and they're not really that active in the business. And so it just hums along. They might not really be motivated to go to multiple units or to put, 50% more effort in for 15% return on that. So there's a lot of different reasons why average remain average. It's still some of the same reasons why the underperformers are underperformers, but average performers, they're kind of hard to move up. I think they just need to the franchisors need to help them get motivated to move up, need to show them the carrot on how to get better, how to execute better, how to manage better. And a lot of it is they're getting their own way because they are not leveling up on employees. They're not leveling up on systems in their own locations or units, whatever it is. Top performing franchisees are top because they're always looking at how to improve. They're always hanging out with other top performing franchisees and they're thinking, how can I get better? What are these other people doing that's different than what I'm doing? How do I find they're always looking for their next location. They got their map out and they've got their customer map out and they're saying, oh, my customers are coming from this other area. This is probably the target of my next location. I should probably start looking for real estate there or adding a second truck or a third truck or something like that. So they're always forward thinking. They're always looking ahead. was talking to Andy, the guy that's a new franchisee with one of our brands. And he's like, Erik, I used to think in terms of like 1 year. Now I'm thinking in terms of 10 year. So top performing franchisees are always looking ahead, and they're thinking, and they probably think about culture more than any of the other people do. They're thinking, I get great hires, I have a great culture, I treat them well, and I'm wanting to get better as a leader so I can, and that's why they're top performing franchisees. Like, employees want to work for them. Like, they are inspiring to their employees, their team members. They are helping their team members with, maybe it's insurance, maybe it's leadership stuff, but they are always helping by raising up leaders. They're always thinking, I need to, I got a great manager now, but how do I take that manager and turn them into a district operational manager when I have 3 locations? And how do I help them raise up managers underneath them? So, and they're thinking, how can I help the system? How can I have a good relationship with the different department heads at the corporate office? How can I have a good relationship with the founders or key people at the corporate office so I can help improve the system? Top franchisees are probably not just following the system. They're not top franchisees just because they follow the system, but they follow the system, they execute it, and they innovate, but they innovate most of the time with the franchisor to do things together. And maybe the franchisor is going to help them innovate or listen to them. So just spitballing. So those are some of the things I see as the differences.
No, that's great. So that perfect. Let's flip it. Let's say above average, really good franchisee across the board. What's the difference between a great system and a poor system? And okay, if we can control, this is a solid franchisee coming in. They've got enough capital. They've got a great attitude. They've got some managerial experience. This may or may not be their first business, but they're hungry, and they're willing to learn. Where does it flip on the other side?
So a poor franchisor is going to, and let's talk about emerging. So 0 to like 100 locations. And so I know that's really broad, but let's just say they are emerging, and they're not bought out by private equity. So a poor franchisor is going to think they know everything, and they're going to rule with an iron fist, even though they don't have it all figured out. They might even have experience as a franchisee or as a franchisor, or they're getting coached by the wrong people that are saying, you need to tell your franchisees to follow the system, even though the system is not completely dialed in, because it doesn't get dialed in until you have a lot of locations open. So they rule with an iron fist. They're like, it's my way or the highway. This is the system. It works because it worked in 1 location or 3 locations. They think that's the way that it works everywhere. So they're just too rigid. They are not listening to franchisees that are successful in their system. They think they know better. They're not teachable. They're not coachable. They're not making good hires. They are not making hires as they grow. They are not putting in. They don't have good vendors. They're listening to their vendors, but not listening to their franchisees, which can be a recipe for disaster, because sometimes they hit the easy button. Big vendor says this is the way it's done, works with big name franchisees, so they've got to be good. And if they just listen to that probably may not be the best vendor, but it makes it easy for the franchisor because they can manage the franchisees. So, so those are some of the things or litigious, a franchisor that has lawsuits already that they are going after their franchisees for things, or there's just challenge. Not all lawsuits. Just because a franchisor has a lawsuit or something like that, it doesn't mean it's written off, but it's something to start. It's a yellow flag. I should probably dig into that a little bit more to understand why. So, but if a franchisor becomes litigious, let's say they hire an attorney as their COO. Well, what does that tell you? Or you hear stories from them talking about how they kind of rule really harsh, or they make statements out of franchisees that didn't do everything right. Those will start to impact franchisee-franchisor relationship. And the biggest thing for a bad franchisor, underperforming, low-performing franchisor, is most franchisees aren't making money. Like if the franchisees aren't making money or aren't being making it like what they thought they were going to make it, according to the item 19, and expectations set that ways, that is that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Average franchisors, they probably have some great franchisees that are good, making money. It's hard with average. Let's skip by average, because they're going to be in between the great and the weak ones.
Fair. Yeah.
Great franchise is, amazing founder. We kind of talked about what an amazing founder looks like. Well capitalized. They don't have to have tens of $1 million in the bank, but they have enough money. They're listening to really smart people that have gone before them. And so they're listening to smart people. They're listening to their franchisees. They're selective of franchisees. And this is what's hard. All these franchisors say they're selective with franchisees before they get them. Most of them are not that selective, but I get to be part of conversations with our brands and other brands too, because it's not just our brands. There's other really good brands out there, and they are really careful on bringing on the right franchisees. They're like, "Are you sure we should award them this many? Maybe they need 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3. Maybe they need, maybe they should do 3. If they're only looking at 1, they should be doing 3. Do they have the right mindset? Do they have the right, is that the right franchise partner for us? Or are they questioning everything? Do they question everything from before they're even a franchisee? Like argumentatively question everything, not from just being inquisitive. So they are good at selecting the right franchisees. They own up to their own mistakes. Hey, we made a mistake here. We had the wrong hire here, wrong vendor here. So a good franchisor should talk about the mistakes that they've made and what they learned from it and how they've changed moving forward. Good franchisors should want the good franchisees to get together and talk, and they should help facilitate some of that. They should have franchisees that are amazing franchisees get on calls and coach other franchisees that are not doing as well. So the franchisors that just want to be the ones that are always talking and telling franchisees, what to do, that's not always the best thing. We all learn from peers and from each other. And so I'd like it when franchisors bring on top performing franchisees to share what they're learning about how to run a successful business. And then they make money. Successful franchisors or franchisees make money. The majority of them make money. And it's hard to, as you validate, you'll start to understand, if they're making money or not making money. And sometimes you don't understand that because you're in it too early. So I think some of the best emerging franchisors, they know that they want some of these pioneers in their system to help them build that system versus want everything want the person that wants everything handed to them, that full playbook of everything that works right. If that's you, then you probably want that franchisor that has 100 franchisees in their system, because there's a lot to learn along the way. So those are some of the things that I think amazing founders and some of the better franchisors are doing well.
That was amazing. What would you say to the individual or the group if I'm a solid franchisee but I'm in a bad system? What do I do? Or if I'm a solid franchisor but I realize we've got some franchisees that we missed it because we're still in the first 20, and the first 20 too many of them aren't right. At what point, is it too late? What do we do to autocorrect?
Help the underperforming franchisees sell to better franchisees, and make sure those better franchisees have the capacity to be able to take that on and it doesn't hurt them. Okay. Help them exit the system and without losing their shirt. Franchisee that's part of a bad system, chalk it up as a loss. I've lost probably close to $1 million of real money being a part of wrong systems. And that's made me a better consultant. It made me a better franchisee. It made me a better franchisor, helped me be a better advisor. Losing money, legit losing money. But you just got to cut your losses sometimes. And that's the best thing that you can do. It gets all that stuff out of your head, gives you a big tax hopefully some tax write-offs. But you just, are you going to continue to bleed, or are you just going to cut the cord and move on? So I would say cut it, move on, and get out of it. Yeah. And that's hard to do, but that's what I would do.
That's really hard to do. Are there any metrics that you can like look at, or is it more of a gut feeling when you're in that position?
I would look at, okay, today, here I am, I'm losing $5,000 a month, and I don't want to keep doing this. How long is it going to take me to get to where I am not losing any money? And then how long is it going to take me to where I'm starting to make $10,000 a month, or whatever, $20,000 a month? And you're like, okay, I could spend my time elsewhere and make more money. Then cut it. Or if you're losing $5,000 a month and you think you can start breaking even in 6 months, and then you can start making money, and then 6 months later you're not there, then make that as a drop dead date. If I'm not where I need to be, then cut the cord and get out.
Great, man.
Speaking from experience with all of this stuff, too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm speaking from experience with all of that. So it's not just, that's not theory. That's what I told myself, and I've had to do that.
And that's why I love it. I love hearing from you so much, because to me, on the outside, I see you in a position, but I know that in order to get there, you've had to overcome so many struggles, and you were able, that I lost $1 million over the course of all these years. Like that was a phrase, but that was a significant amount of time that you probably struggled immensely. As we wrap up, I never asked about a hard cutoff time, but I want to respect your time. Myself, where I'm at, I got started in Mosquito Joe in 2016. We launched our additional franchise, Groovy Hughes Paint and Power Wash, last fall. And I became a consultant with FranChoice around the same time. The timing of launching a new franchise brand and becoming a consultant was not on purpose. That just happened. But I am loving being a consultant. I am loving building up this platform and talking to individuals like you. And so I'm in the space now where I see the paths starting to divide of living in this owner-operator model and becoming something different within the franchising space. And I hear guys like you, Brian Beers, and some other folks out there that I've been able to engage with, and the courses can change. What would you say to somebody like me, where I'm in this space and I'm kind of looking, I've been grinding for almost a decade, but now I'm looking up.
I do what brings energy. And it doesn't have to be long term. Like, if consulting is bringing you energy, and you can have the leads coming in because you're documenting your journey, like what Brian does, then that's awesome. Then keep doing that. If that becomes a grind, which it became a grind for me, I didn't enjoy it anymore, I just stopped. Whatever brings you joy, whatever brings you fulfillment, whatever brings you energy, and it's not just about the money, then I would, I don't chase the dollar. Like, I don't chase the dollar anymore. I have friends that make way more money than I do. I could make way more money, but I've got an amazing life. And so it is not like we could do more brands at Front Street to make more money, but we want to bring on the right ones and do it in a way that fits our lifestyle and allows us to give what we can to our brands. And I know a lot of people say stuff like that, and you're like, is that really true? It's 100% true for us. And that's how I live my life. So I don't chase the dollar, man. I chase time with my family. I chase memories with my family. I chase doing the right things with the people that I love doing it with. And I see too many people just get caught up in the money. And successful people, not people trying to make money, but people that are making the millions a year in net profit, and they're wanting more. And when is that going to be enough? So I don't know where you are with all of that, but don't get to the point where you're just chasing money to have a bigger lifestyle.
I appreciate that. Okay, last question.
We got to hurry because I'm 1 minute late for my franchisee mastermind. So let's do it.
Man, how do you get somebody to get off of zero when they're looking at a franchise concept?
Just take it away. Come back to me whenever the time's right. Most people are probably going to be bad franchisees if they can't make a decision. The easiest decision to make is to become a franchisee. Decisions don't get easier after that.
Amen. Well, hey, I appreciate you so much for hopping on. This has been such a pleasure. Let's get you off and get you to the mastermind. To the listener, check out the podcast, Franchise Secrets. And as always, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
See you, buddy.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.